Welcome. In this episode, we explore the life of Tyrannosaurus rex, often called T. rex, one of the most iconic dinosaurs. But tonight, we go beyond its fearsome reputation. We'll discover how it was born, grew, hunted, and lived. How it quietly walked across ancient plains with its tail swaying behind. If you enjoy this exploration, please gently subscribe. And suggest another dinosaur species you'd like to learn about on your next restful evening. The story of a T-Rex begins in a nest of fragile eggs, hidden in the soft earth. In the Late Cretaceous, about 68 million years ago, in what we now call Western North America, a female T-Rex laid her eggs in shallow ground scrapes. The eggs were roughly the size of grapefruit, with tough shells designed to protect the growing embryo within. They were arranged in loose clusters, perhaps a dozen, just enough to allow gentle warmth from the sun to reach the developing young. The eggs contained embryos nearly the size of a turkey when fully formed. Research on embryonic T-Rex bones shows hatchlings could have been nearly 1 meter long upon hatching. These babies emerged from their shells twice as large as any modern hatchling, yet still vulnerable. Their legs were long, allowing immediate movement. Their limbs, though small compared to adults, were proportionate for their time of life. When the hatchling T-Rex broke free from its shell, it walked across the plains on tiny, sturdy legs. Its tail balanced behind. Its skull was narrow, its eyes sharp. Paleontologists studied tiny skull and bone fragments to reconstruct these early stages. One specimen, Baby Bob, is a juvenile T-Rex about 4 years old, offering insight into early growth. Did adult T-Rex care for their young? As is common for solitary carnivorous dinosaurs, parental care may have been short-lived. Fossil evidence shows nesting sites, yet no adult bones nearby. Modern research suggests hatchlings received some protection at first, but quickly became self-sufficient. This matches findings that juveniles became independent after a few years. Once hatched, young T-Rex grew rapidly. Bone histology shows they grew fast, sometimes gaining hundreds of kilograms per year. Growth spurts started around age 10, accelerating until around 18. These rapid changes shaped their skulls, teeth, legs, and senses. For years, paleontologists thought fossils of smaller tyrannosaurs were young T-Rex. A species called Nanotyrannus lancensis was proposed. New 2024 studies, measuring growth rings, found those smaller fossils were adults of a separate species. Meanwhile, bone analysis confirms that true juvenile T-Rex specimens are rare. Only a few have been found. What did a young T-Rex look like? Juveniles had longer legs, lighter skulls, and thinner, blade-like teeth, suited for hunting small prey. Their bite could puncture bone about 5,600 N, comparable to a crocodile or hyena. These juveniles likely filled a different ecological niche than adults, hunting smaller animals and gradually shifting to larger prey as they aged. By age 4 to 6, juveniles were already hunting alone. The absence of adult fossils at nest sites and the changed anatomy show they were adapted for independent survival. These young T-Rex walked across the plains, their tails swaying behind, searching for small prey, growing stronger each day. So, from egg to juvenile, T-Rex walked across its ancient world with growing strength and gradually shifting behavior. In these early years, it transformed quietly from vulnerable hatchling into a self-reliant young hunter. Its body steadily gearing up for the adult life ahead. With that measured beginning laid out, now that we understand how T-Rex began its life, let us now move on to its journey toward full growth and the challenges it faced during its development. The journey from a vulnerable juvenile to a fully grown Tyrannosaurus rex was a slow and dramatic transformation, one measured not just in size, but in anatomical change, ecological role, and evolutionary purpose. In the years after hatching, the young T-Rex entered a critical period of physical expansion and behavioral adaptation. Its body was not yet the massive barrel-chested titan we know from adult fossils. Instead, it moved with relative agility, slender limbs carrying it with surprising speed across forested floodplains, coastal shallows, and open inland environments. This phase between independence and maturity was perhaps the most dynamic in the life of a Tyrannosaurus. Young T-Rex looked strikingly different from the adults they would become. As juveniles, they were more lightly built. Their limbs were proportionally longer, their skulls narrower, and their teeth more blade-like. These thinner, sharper teeth were ideal for slicing through flesh, but not yet for crushing bone. That skill in the deep, conical teeth associated with adult tyrannosaurs would come later. This leaner frame served a purpose. As younger tyrannosaurs hunted smaller, faster prey, their agility became essential. Their long legs and balanced gait helped them navigate complex terrain quickly. The juvenile T-Rex was a sprinter, not a tank. It moved with purpose, its tail swaying gently behind, eyes fixed forward. Where adults lumbered and asserted dominance through strength and size, young T-Rex relied on speed, stealth, and flexibility. Bone analysis from various T-Rex specimens tells us a great deal about how these animals grew. Internal structures in the bones, especially growth rings similar to those found in trees, reveal the rate of expansion during different life phases. In the first decade of life, the growth rate was steady but manageable. Then, somewhere between 10 and 15 years of age, a dramatic change occurred. The young Tyrannosaur entered a phase of accelerated growth, kind of biological surge, where it could gain hundreds of kilograms each year. This phase of rapid development meant the T-Rex experienced some of the fastest growth rates known among large terrestrial vertebrates. It added both muscle mass and skeletal strength. Its limbs thickened, its torso expanded, its skull widened and deepened. The shape of its teeth shifted. These changes signaled not just a maturing body, but a change in function, role, and survival strategy. By the time the T-Rex approached 18 to 20 years old, it was nearing its full adult size. It's often exceeding 12 meters in length and weighing upwards of 8 to 9 metric tons. This period of growth wasn't simply about getting larger, it was about becoming structurally different. As the skull developed, it became more robust. Its upper jaw deepened. The nasal bones fused to provide strength against the massive bite forces it would later generate. Air pockets in the skull reduced weight without sacrificing strength, an efficient adaptation for such a large predator. Its teeth became broader and more deeply rooted, shifting from slicing tools to crushing instruments. These adult teeth were thick and strong, with reinforced enamel edges designed to penetrate and fracture bone. The forelimbs, though famously short, remained muscular and sturdy throughout development. Their exact function remains debated, but many paleontologists believe they were used for gripping during feeding, helping the T-Rex stabilize itself as it tore through large carcasses. The tail, as always, remained long and muscular, acting as a counterbalance to the massive head and torso. This tail was crucial for stability and movement, allowing the animal to turn and pivot with control, despite its growing mass. Growing up in the Late Cretaceous meant navigating a complex and often dangerous world. T-Rex lived in what is now Western North America, in a region known as Lara Media, a long, narrow landmass separated from eastern North America by a shallow sea. This land was warm, humid, and dotted with rivers, forests, coastal wetlands, and open plains. The environment was rich with life. Herbivorous dinosaurs, like hadrosaurs and ceratopsians, moved in herds, while smaller predators and scavengers patrolled the underbrush. For a young T-Rex, this meant a chance to hone its instincts. It practiced stalking, learned how to read movement, and developed strategies for hunting prey. It also had to remain cautious. Although T-Rex was a top predator as an adult, younger individuals likely faced danger from larger adults. Survival, especially in these earlier years, meant being quick and cautious, observing before engaging. These lessons were reinforced over time, becoming hardwired into the animal's behavioral patterns. Interestingly, the ecological role of a young T-Rex may have been very different from that of an adult. This idea is known as ontogenetic niche partitioning, meaning that a species fills different ecological roles at different life stages. While adults hunted large, slow-moving prey and could scavenge from nearly any carcass, juveniles likely focused on smaller dinosaurs, mammals, reptiles, and perhaps even invertebrates. Their speed and lighter build allowed them to maneuver into spaces their adult counterparts could not access. This division in behavior reduced competition between generations of the same species. It also provided T-Rex with an evolutionary advantage, allowing more individuals to survive and thrive in the same environment without exhausting shared resources. Beyond physical growth, the juvenile T-Rex may have also developed cognitively. Its brain, though not exceptionally large by modern standards, was well organized. The olfactory bulbs, the parts responsible for smell, were particularly pronounced, even in juveniles. This likely gave the young T-Rex a strong sense of smell, useful for tracking prey or locating distant carcasses. The visual centers of the brain also suggest T-Rex had forward-facing eyes, giving it depth perception, a crucial trait for a predator. As the animal matured, these abilities sharpened. Combined with an active learning environment, the young Tyrannosaur's brain adapted to its surroundings. It learned by observation, trial, and instinct. Its senses became attuned to the patterns of life and death that surrounded it. Each hunt, each close encounter, each migration etched experience into its developing mind. Over years of movement, hunger, and survival, the young T-Rex became not just physically prepared, but mentally ready to enter its adult life. Survival was never guaranteed. Many juvenile fossils show evidence of injury, fractured bones, bite marks, and infection. Some wounds healed, others did not. These fossils give us a glimpse into the harshness of prehistoric life. A broken leg, a failed hunt, or a run-in with a larger predator could end a young life quickly. Parasites and disease likely affected these animals as well, though rarely preserved in fossil form. Evidence of bone lesions and deformities suggests that T-Rex, like all animals, faced microbial threats. Still, those that survived did so by adapting, growing stronger, and navigating their world with increasing skill. Step by step, they matured into the apex predators their bones now represent. By the end of its second decade of life, the T-Rex had completed its transformation. It was now large enough, strong enough, and experienced enough to dominate its landscape. It no longer had to run from larger predators. Now, it was the larger predator. Its body, once light and agile, had become dense and muscular. Its bite could crush bone. Its roar, if it had one, would have carried across valleys. It was no longer a learner. It was now a force of nature. Yet even in adulthood, it would still face challenges. Competition, injury, scarcity of food, harsh seasonal shifts. These were the realities of life in the Cretaceous, no matter how large one became. And so, the young Tyrannosaurus grew, guided by instinct, strengthened by adversity, shaped by the quiet logic of evolution. Its bones thickened, its senses sharpened, its mind matured. From an agile hunter to a walking titan, each step brought it closer to the life it was destined to lead. Now that we've followed how the T-Rex grew and adapted to its ancient world, let us now talk about how it hunted, and how its feeding behavior made it one of the most specialized predators of its time. Tyrannosaurus rex is best known for its role as a predator, but what made it so effective? In this segment, we quietly examine the feeding behavior of this giant theropod. Moving slowly through its sensory abilities, jaw structure, tooth design, and ecological strategies for obtaining nourishment in a changing late Cretaceous landscape. The feeding behavior of T-Rex wasn't simply about size or power. It was a finely tuned outcome of millions of years of evolution shaped by both anatomy and environment. With each meal, it survived. With each hunt or scavenged carcass, it sustained its massive body. Let's begin. The most defining feature of T-Rex, apart from its towering size, was its bite. The jaw of an adult T-Rex was among the most powerful ever known in any terrestrial animal. Studies of its skull mechanics showed that it could exert up to 12,800 pounds of pressure per square inch. Strong enough to crush bone with ease, this power was not accidental. It came from a combination of reinforced cranial bones, deep-set teeth, and powerful jaw muscles. The lower jaw had a semi-rigid joint near its midsection. It's called the mandibular symphysis, which allowed each side of the jaw to slightly move independently. This gave it a unique ability to adjust bite pressure across different parts of the mouth, especially useful when holding on to struggling prey or tearing through carcasses. The upper jaw, meanwhile, was robust and deeply anchored to the skull, forming a stable structure that could absorb high levels of stress during feeding. As the T-Rex bit down, its teeth did more than cut. They crushed. The teeth of T-Rex were shaped not for slicing or precision, but for raw force and durability. They were long, thick, and curved slightly backward. Serrated edges lined the front and back of each tooth. helping to grip and tear through meat, skin, and sinew. Some teeth were as long as 30 centimeters, including the root nearly the length of a forearm. Unlike the knife-like teeth of earlier theropods such as Allosaurus, the teeth of T. rex were more robust. They didn't simply shear flesh. They endured repeated impacts and stress, sinking deep into prey, anchoring the jaws firmly during feeding. Each tooth was slightly D-shaped in cross-section. Broad on one side, sharp on the other, perfectly suited to resist bending forces when biting down on bone. And the bite marks tell the story. Fossilized bones from hadrosaurs, ceratopsians, and even other tyrannosaurs often bear deep, ragged gouges, signatures of T. rex teeth, sometimes with embedded fragments left behind. When it fed, it left marks that time could not erase. T. rex lived in a richly populated ecosystem during the Maastrichtian stage of the Late Cretaceous, roughly 68 to 66 million years ago, shared its environment with large herbivores such as Triceratops, Edmontosaurus, and Ankylosaurus. These animals likely made up the bulk of its prey. Some were slow-moving, while others traveled in herds. Many were heavily armored or large enough to pose a risk, but for a predator the size of T. rex, that risk was part of the calculation. There's compelling fossil evidence of predatory behavior. One Triceratops specimen shows partially healed bite marks on the frill, suggesting an attack that the animal survived. Another hadrosaur fossil preserves a T. rex tooth embedded deep within its tailbone, surrounded by healed bone, again, evidence of a failed hunt. These moments frozen in fossil records show that T. rex didn't always succeed in its hunts. It sometimes bit and lost. But when it did succeed, its prey had little chance of surviving the encounter. But not every meal came from a hunt. T. rex was also a capable scavenger. Its keen sense of smell, indicated by its large olfactory bulbs, allowed it to detect the scent of decaying flesh from great distances. Even across forests, floodplains, or riverbeds, the scent of a carcass could draw a tyrannosaur in. And once it arrived, few other animals could compete. Smaller predators would retreat. Even another tyrannosaur might yield to the largest adult in the region. Size alone granted dominance. And with its crushing bite, it could break open bones and reach the marrow, nutrients other carnivores couldn't access. This dual role, as both predator and scavenger, made T. rex highly efficient. It didn't rely solely on hunting, nor did it only feed on what it found. It used every available method, maximizing its chances of survival in a varied environment. Its brain, its body, and its instincts worked together in balance. When feeding on a carcass, the T. rex likely approached with caution at first. If the meal was fresh, it may have circled, watching for signs of danger, other predators, threats, or competition. Then, it would lower its head, using its massive skull to position the jaws around the choicest section of flesh. The bite was not a quick snap, but a calculated crush. The jaws clamped shut with enormous force, anchoring through muscle and into bone. Then the head pulled back, jerking, twisting, and tearing. The neck, composed of strong vertebrae and thick muscles, worked in tandem with the jaw. These motions helped separate limbs, expose organs, and open rib cages. In some cases, the tyrannosaur may have used its forelimbs for stabilization, pressing downward as it tore upward. Though short, these limbs were strong and tipped with sharp claws. After feeding, it may have lingered nearby, consuming as much as it could. And when it was done, the remains would be scattered, some bones broken open, others carried off by smaller scavengers. Its feeding left behind a trail of clues, now captured in stone. Interestingly, the feeding behavior of juvenile T. rex was quite different from that of adults. As noted earlier, juveniles had slimmer, sharper teeth and a more lightweight build. These features were suited for hunting smaller, more agile prey. Instead of using brute force, young T. rex relied on precision and speed. They may have targeted animals such as small ceratopsians, juvenile hadrosaurs, or even early mammals and reptiles. This difference in diet allowed young tyrannosaurs to avoid competition with adults, a concept known as niche partitioning. As they grew and matured, their feeding strategy gradually shifted. Their skulls thickened, their teeth broadened, and their bite force increased. Over time, their role evolved from nimble hunter to dominant predator. To maintain its mass, an adult T-Rex needed a significant amount of food. Estimates suggest it may have consumed up to 40,000 calories or more per day, though this number varied depending on age, climate, and activity level. It likely fed every few days, rather than daily. Large meals, rich in protein and fat, could sustain it for extended periods. Its digestive system would have been efficient at extracting nutrients, breaking down both flesh and bone. The long periods between meals were probably spent resting, patrolling, or moving between feeding grounds. It walked slowly, its heavy tail swaying in rhythm, conserving energy until its next opportunity arose. Unlike the constant grazing of herbivores, the life of T-Rex moved in slower pulses, waiting, watching, then acting. Much of what we know about T-Rex feeding behavior comes from fossilized evidence. Tooth marks found on fossil bones, deep gouges, punctures, and scrape marks, coprolites, or fossilized droppings containing crushed bone fragments. Healed wounds on prey animals, suggesting active predation, embedded teeth, broken off during feeding. Later preserved and fossilized remains, each of these clues, when viewed together, forms a clearer picture of how this animal fed. Not just that it did, but how it adapted, adjusted, and responded to its environment. Its feeding was not random or chaotic. It was deliberate, refined, and effective. After feeding, the Tyrannosaurus rex may have moved slowly away from the carcass. Its movements were calm, deliberate. There was no need to hurry. With a full belly, it returned to shade or forest edge, finding a place to rest. Its breathing slowed, its limbs folded beneath its weight. Its tail curled gently beside it. For hours, or even days, it remained still, digesting, conserving, and preparing for the next time hunger would return. These quiet moments filled the gaps between action. They were as much a part of its life as any hunt or kill. In those quiet hours, the great predator became part of the stillness of the ancient world around it. And so, the cycle repeated. Hunt or scavenge, eat, rest, roam, and again. Thus, Tyrannosaurus rex lived not just through its strength, but through the precision and efficiency of its feeding. Its bite was bone-breaking. Its instincts were honed by time. Its place in the food chain was shaped not by brutality, but by balance. Now that we've explored how the T-Rex found food and fed in the wild, let us now explore how it sought mates, reproduced, and interacted with others of its kind, if it ever did at all. Tyrannosaurus rex, like all creatures, had a singular biological goal beyond survival: to reproduce. But how did a creature of such immense size, such solitary power, approach courtship, mating, and the continuation of its lineage? Much about the reproductive behavior of T-Rex remains uncertain, yet through fossil clues, comparisons to modern animals, and careful scientific inference, paleontologists have begun to outline a picture: quiet, cautious, and grounded in natural cycles. Now we explore how T-Rex may have mated, what its social interactions might have looked like, and how its legacy continued not just through bones, but through behavior passed from one generation to the next. Tyrannosaurus rex grew quickly, as we've seen, but sexual maturity did not come with full size. It likely reached reproductive age between 14 and 18 years old, just as its growth spurt began to slow. By this point, it was already large, though not always at its full adult mass. Life expectancy is harder to determine. While some individuals may have lived into their late 20s, many did not. The fossil record suggests that after reaching reproductive age, survival rates dropped. Perhaps injuries, disease, or competition took a toll. This means the window for reproduction was relatively narrow, only a few short years during adulthood. Each successful mating, then, carried significant evolutionary weight. The continuation of the species may have depended on just a few successful individuals each generation. What did courtship look like for a Tyrannosaurus? No fossil evidence shows display feathers, frills, or crests as seen in some other dinosaurs. However, it's possible that T-Rex engaged in behavioral displays, quiet signals of strength or dominance, rather than colorful ornamentation. Large-bodied animals today, such as crocodiles or large birds, use vocalizations, posture, scent marking, and territorial display to attract mates. T-Rex may have done the same. Perhaps males walked slowly, circling females at a distance. Perhaps they bellowed softly, their deep calls resonating through ancient forests. Perhaps size, scent, or scars told a story, signaling health, strength, or experience. Whatever the mechanism, it was likely physical, measured, and slow. Courtship in such large animals may have unfolded over hours or even days. Was Tyrannosaurus rex a solitary predator, or did it sometimes tolerate others? This remains a question of ongoing debate. Most fossil finds suggest solitary behavior. Individuals are usually found alone, not in groups. Their range was likely large, requiring wide territories to support their feeding needs. This points toward a mostly solitary lifestyle, yet there are exceptions. In a few locations, multiple T-Rex specimens have been found in proximity, including bone beds that suggest possible group living or at least temporary gatherings. Some paleontologists propose that juvenile T-Rex may have lived or hunted in loosely formed groups, perhaps siblings that stayed near each other in early life. Others suggest adults may have come together during mating seasons or around shared food sources. Still, these gatherings were likely brief and infrequent. Tyrannosaurus was not a social animal in the mammalian sense. It did not form herds or family units, but under specific conditions, it may have tolerated the presence of others, especially if resources or mating opportunities made it necessary. Though the details remain speculative, reproduction among tyrannosaurs likely followed a pattern seen in many reptiles and birds today. Mating may have involved physical alignment, with the male carefully positioning his body to avoid injury. For creatures of this size, the act required precision and stability. Males were likely smaller and lighter than females, an adaptation seen in many modern reptiles. This size difference would have made the mating process more feasible, reducing stress on the female's body. Following fertilization, the female would find a quiet, elevated, and dry place to lay her eggs. Tyrannosaurus rex laid hard-shelled eggs, likely similar in shape and structure to those of modern large birds. These eggs were arranged in shallow nests, possibly built with vegetation or scraped from soft soil. Clutch size remains unknown, though. Estimates range from 10 to 20 eggs per nest. The nests were spaced carefully, allowing sunlight to warm the eggs, while also protecting them from flooding or predation. There is no strong fossil evidence of extensive parental care, but some scientists believe the mother may have guarded the nest during incubation. Others suggest the young were left to hatch independently. The lack of adult bones near most nesting sites suggests a balance. Perhaps a short period of protection followed by independence. Regardless of the details, the act of reproduction, of laying eggs in a vulnerable, quiet world, was a turning point. A new generation began, and the adult T-Rex, now having completed its role, returned once more to the stillness of its life. In modern predators, offspring often face danger not just from the environment, but from their own kind. It's possible that young T-Rex also faced infanticide, the killing of young by unrelated or rival adults. Large predators sometimes eliminate the offspring of others to reduce competition or trigger new mating opportunities. While there's no direct fossil evidence of this in T-Rex, the behavior is common in many modern carnivores. It's possible that nesting sites were hidden not just from scavengers, but from other tyrannosaurs. This layer of danger would have added complexity to reproductive timing, location, and secrecy. Once the eggs hatched, the hatchlings, perhaps nearly a meter in length, would move quickly from the nest. Their bodies were adapted for immediate mobility. They may have hunted small prey within days. If the adults offered care, it was likely brief. More likely, the hatchlings joined a broader ecosystem of prey and predators, learning to survive through movement, caution, and instinct. Each young tyrannosaur carried the legacy of its ancestors not through memory, but through bone, muscle, and reaction. And those who survived would one day repeat the cycle, continuing the quiet rhythm of life begun so many generations before. Even today, long after the species has vanished, we trace its success through time. Fossil finds, eggshell fragments, juvenile skeletons, nesting sites give us glimpses into these ancient family lines. We do not know the names of individuals, but their shapes, their growth, their placement in the landscape speak softly of the lives they led. Through reproduction, T-Rex endured until the very end of the Cretaceous. Its line persisted until a moment of extinction swept across the Earth, ending the reign of the non-avian dinosaurs. But until that day, it walked, it fed, and it mated. And through that, it lived. And so, Tyrannosaurus rex passed on its legacy, not through nurture, but through nature. Through the careful act of reproduction, it ensured that its strength, its form, and its instincts endured. In the stillness of nesting grounds and the quiet of ancient forests, a cycle began again, simple and slow. Now that we've reflected on how T-Rex continued its line through reproduction, let us now move toward the end, exploring how this magnificent species disappeared, and what remains of it in the deep fossil record of our planet. The reign of Tyrannosaurus rex lasted only a brief window in Earth's deep history. Just 2 to 3 million years, near the very end of the Cretaceous period. And yet, in that short span, it reached a pinnacle of evolutionary specialization. The apex predator, master of its ecosystem. Dominant force in the late Cretaceous landscape of North America. But even this iconic predator, with all its strength, sensory precision, ecological dominance, was not immune to the vast cycles of Earth's change. In this segment, we explore how the Tyrannosaurus met its end, not through struggle or weakness, but through the silence of a world that changed faster than any species could endure. We will also reflect on what its legacy means today, quiet bones beneath the earth that whisper stories of a vanished age. Around 66 million years ago, the planet was changing. The continents had drifted into new positions, seas rose and fell, climate patterns shifted across regions, volcanic activity increased, the skies darkened with ash and gas, and most dramatically, a single, catastrophic event, a moment of impact, changed everything. This moment is called the Cretaceous-Paleogene Extinction Event, or the KPG extinction. It was not gradual. It was sudden. A massive asteroid, over 10 kilometers in diameter, struck the Earth near what is now the peninsula in Mexico. The impact created a crater over 180 kilometers wide. The energy released was billions of times stronger than any human-made explosion. Firestorms spread across continents. Shockwaves triggered massive earthquakes. Tsunamis surged across shallow inland seas. But it was the aftermath that sealed the fate of Tyrannosaurus rex. After the impact, soot and debris filled the atmosphere. Sunlight was blocked. Photosynthesis slowed, then stopped. Plants withered. Herbivores starved. And in turn, the great predators, like the T-Rex, found themselves without prey. The cooling temperatures, lack of food, and toxic conditions created a chain reaction of extinction. T-Rex, once dominant, now walked through a world that could no longer support it. Its heavy body, adapted for strength and precision, became a burden in a collapsing ecosystem. It faded not in a blaze of battle, but in silence, one life at a time, over months or years, until none remained. The Earth moved forward. A Tyrannosaurus rex did not. The T-Rex was just one of many species lost in the event. In total, around 75% of all life on Earth disappeared. This included all non-avian dinosaurs, large marine reptiles, pterosaurs, and countless plants, invertebrates, and microorganisms. Only small, adaptable species, those able to hide, wait, or feed on detritus, survived. Among these were small feathered theropods, distant relatives of T-Rex. Some of these would go on to become modern birds. So in a sense, the line of Tyrannosaurus did not end entirely. Some echoes continued, subtle and transformed. Today's birds, though delicate in form, still carry genetic traces of that great lineage. We do not know the final individual Tyrannosaurus rex. No fossil marks the last of its kind. But some of the youngest known specimens suggest they lived until the very edge of the boundary. These fossils, preserved in the uppermost layers of the Hell Creek Formation and similar deposits, contain fine details, teeth, bone texture, even impressions of soft tissue in some cases. They are silent witnesses to a world that ended not just in fire, but in deep geological memory. After their time passed, layers of sediment covered their remains. Rain, sand, wind, flood. Time itself pressed them into the earth. Slowly, over millions of years, bone became stone. Life became fossil. And in that fossil, a legacy waited. Today, Tyrannosaurus rex stands as one of the most recognized prehistoric animals in the world. Its name, which means tyrant lizard king, echoes in museums, films, books, and collective imagination. But its true legacy is not roar or terror. It is adaptation. balance, precision. It was a creature sculpted perfectly for its time, a master of its ecosystem, neither cruel nor chaotic, but simply alive. Its extinction reminds us that even the most powerful species are bound to the rhythm of the earth. Change comes for all, and life, no matter how dominant, exists only within the narrow bounds of what the planet will allow. After the extinction, Earth entered a new era, the Paleogene. Small mammals rose, forests regrew, oceans restabilized, the planet reshaped itself around new forms of life. Dinosaurs became part of the past, entombed in sediment, scattered across ancient floodplains, waiting to be uncovered. Millions of years passed before the first human hand touched a piece of Tyrannosaurus bone. And when it did, the silence of that bone was finally broken. And so, the Tyrannosaurus rex vanished, not in conflict or failure, but through the quiet close of an age. Its bones remained behind, quiet and still, beneath layers of stone and time. And in those bones we find not just the memory of a predator, but the story of a world that once was. Now that we have looked at the extinction and fading legacy of this great creature, let us now explore how we came to know it at all, through fossils, through discovery, and through the careful work of scientists bringing the past back into focus. The Tyrannosaurus rex is gone. Its heavy footsteps no longer echo across riverbeds. Its breath no longer stirs the ancient leaves. The forests where it hunted are now stone. The plains it roamed lie buried beneath fields and mountains. What remains are bones, silent, still, and deep beneath the earth. Yet, in those bones, a voice, a quiet story. Of growth, of hunger, of movement, of an animal that once lived with complete purpose. It asked for nothing but to survive, to adapt, to pass on its strength through time. And though that time ended long ago, its shape endures in fossils, in memory, in science. And now, perhaps in your mind, you've walked slowly through its life, from the soft cracking of an egg to the slow stretch of limbs and growth, from hunts across floodplains to the stillness after extinction. You've heard the quiet pulse of a vanished world, and in doing so, you've honored it. The past has no voice of its own. It speaks only when we listen, and when you're ready, another story will be waiting. Thank you for being here. If you found comfort in this journey, consider subscribing to join us again. And if there's another dinosaur you'd like to hear about, feel free to leave a quiet suggestion in the comments below. Until next time.